Amira had always loved the quiet corners of the music school. She would arrive early, just as the sun was spilling gold across the polished floors, and slip into the practice rooms before anyone else. The smell of old wood and the faint scent of sheet music comforted her, reminding her that this was where she belonged, even if no one else noticed. She was not one to seek attention or praise. Most of the time she stayed in the background, listening, learning, and letting her music speak in ways words never could. Her life had always been like this. At home she practiced alone, often playing pieces she had heard only in recordings. Her parents encouraged her quietly, giving her the space she needed, never pushing her too hard. They had seen the spark in her fingers, the way she could bring a melody to life as if the piano itself was part of her, but even they did not fully understand how deep her talent went. It was a secret she carried, a private joy she nurtured in silence. The school was buzzing one Monday morning. Notices of upcoming recitals had gone up on every bulletin board, and teachers were making their assignments. Amira walked past her classmates, who were chattering about who had been given which piece. Some were nervous, others excited. Some bragged about how difficult their assignments were, hoping to impress the teachers. Amira kept her head down and her thoughts to herself. She knew the pieces didn't matter as much as how she played them. Then came the news. One of the senior teachers, known for being strict and having little patience for anyone she considered average, approached Amira. The teacher had heard Amira play in passing but dismissed her as just another quiet student who could manage basic pieces. With a small smile, the teacher handed her a sheet of music and said, "You will prepare this piece for the recital. It is challenging, but I believe you can try." Amira looked at the notes, feeling a flutter of nerves. The piece was known for its complexity, a true test of skill and expression. Her classmates, who had gathered around, snickered quietly. They didn't know her at all, but they had made assumptions. "She can't handle that," one whispered. Another added, "Let's see how long before she gives up." Instead of feeling intimidated, Amira felt a quiet determination. She tucked the sheet music into her bag and nodded. "I will practice," she said softly. The teacher gave her a brief nod, satisfied that she would be busy for weeks trying, and then moved on to assign other students. In the days that followed, Amira found herself spending every spare moment at the piano. The piece was not easy. There were chords that seemed impossible at first, passages that twisted her fingers in directions they had never gone before, rhythms that challenged her sense of timing. At first she stumbled, making mistakes and feeling frustrated, but she didn't let it stop her. Each time she played a wrong note, she would pause, breathe, and start again, determined to understand the music rather than just memorize it. Her classmates continued to talk. Some would laugh when they saw her struggling. Others made bets on when she would give up. Amira didn't care. Their voices faded into the background as she focused on the sound of the keys under her fingers. Slowly, the music began to come alive. She found the nuances, the small shifts in tempo and volume that brought the piece out of the page and into reality. It was as if the piano was listening to her, responding to her every touch. Teachers would occasionally peek in, watching her silently. They saw the concentration, the effort, but they didn't see the magic that was forming. To them, she still looked like a student struggling with a piece she might never master. They didn't know that Amira was learning it not just with her hands, but with her heart. Every chord, every phrase she absorbed and reshaped until it was not only correct but full of feeling. Amira's life outside the music room continued as usual. She attended her classes, smiled at her friends, and helped younger students when she could. But her mind often wandered back to the piano. She would replay sections in her head during lunch breaks, tapping imaginary keys with her fingers. The music became a part of her day, a companion that both challenged and comforted her. Sometimes she felt a twinge of doubt. What if she couldn't perform it perfectly? What if the teachers were right and she failed? But those moments were brief. The love she had for music was stronger than any fear. She reminded herself that she was not playing for the teachers, nor for her classmates. She was playing for herself, for the joy of creating something beautiful. Even her practice sessions became stories of small victories. One evening, she finally nailed a particularly difficult passage. Her fingers moved quickly, precisely, and the sound that came out was exactly what she had imagined. She closed her eyes, letting the final chord resonate, and felt a rush of pride and excitement. She knew then that she was ready for the challenge, ready to show quietly and confidently what she could do. but Amira still remained unseen in many ways. To the teachers, she was the quiet girl at the corner of the room. To her classmates, she was the underdog, someone to underestimate. She moved through the halls like a shadow, carrying her secret talent with her, and that was fine. She didn't need recognition to feel the truth of her gift. As the day of the recital approached, tension filled the school. Students practiced frantically, parents and teachers buzzed with expectations, and the auditorium was being prepared for an audience that would come to judge, to praise, or to critique. Amira felt a quiet calm amidst the chaos. She was ready, though not in a way that could be measured by the teacher's eyes or her classmates' whispers. She was ready in the way that mattered, in the way that only she knew. Even the night before, she stayed at the piano until her fingers were sore, playing softly in the empty room. She didn't need applause, didn't need anyone to watch. The music filled the room, warm and alive, wrapping around her like a familiar friend. Each note was a promise she made to herself, to play her best, to bring the piece to life, to let the music speak louder than any doubt. The recital would come, and with it, judgment. But Amira didn't think about judgment. She thought about the music, about the story she could tell through her hands, about the journey she had taken from those first nervous notes to this moment of readiness. The teachers might not understand her. The students might not believe in her. But she knew the truth of her own abilities, and so, as the night fell and the school grew quiet, Amira left the practice room with a small smile. The piano waited for her, patient and silent, ready to sing at the touch of her hands. She walked home with her head held high, carrying not only her music but also a quiet confidence that no one could see yet. Tomorrow would be the day when everything might change, but tonight was hers, filled with the peaceful knowledge that she had prepared, that she had tried, and that she was ready to let the music speak for her. Amira's days were now fully occupied with the piece she had been assigned. Every morning she arrived at the school early, slipping past the bustling corridors where students hurried to their classes and teachers prepared for their lessons. She would head straight to the piano room, the one that felt most like home, and begin practicing before anyone else arrived. The room was quiet, except for the soft notes that echoed from her playing, filling the space with a calm that seemed to belong only to her. The piece was harder than she had imagined. There were moments where her fingers fumbled, where her mind struggled to keep up with the speed of the notes, and where the complicated rhythms tangled in ways that made her want to stop. Yet she never gave up. She repeated each difficult section over and over, slowly building confidence and finding the rhythm that made sense to her. Each repetition felt like a small victory, a step forward that no one else might ever notice. Her classmates often walked by, whispering or laughing when they saw her so focused and so quiet. Some would say she would never be able to finish it, or that she was wasting her time. Their words didn't hurt her, though. She had learned long ago that people's opinions often reflected their own fears or insecurities. She didn't need their validation. Her focus was on the music, on the feelings she could create through each note, on the story she could tell without using words. Sometimes, Amira would sit back from the piano and just listen to the notes she had played. She would close her eyes and imagine a story unfolding with each sound. The highs and lows of the melody felt like emotions she had carried inside for a long time. She could feel joy, sadness, hope, and longing all within the piece. It was more than just a series of notes on a page. It was a world she could enter, a world she could shape and share. Her teachers visited occasionally, as they did with every student. They watched her from the doorway, expecting to see struggle or mistakes. What they saw instead was concentration, determination, and a steady improvement that surprised even them. They didn't know it yet, but Amira had an instinctive understanding of the music, a natural ability to shape it in ways that were hard to teach. She wasn't just practicing, she was creating something alive. Amira's evenings were also filled with the music. She would go home and spend hours at her own piano, working on the tricky passages that challenged her. Her parents noticed the focus in her eyes, the way she would pause, think, and try again over and over without frustration or complaint. They encouraged her quietly, never pushing too hard, always letting her find her own way. Their support was steady and reassuring, the kind that made her feel safe to explore her abilities. Occasionally, she would encounter moments of doubt. She would ask herself whether she was truly ready for the recital, whether she could perform the piece without faltering, whether the audience and teachers would notice her efforts. But each time she reminded herself of the progress she had made. She had faced difficulty and persevered. She had turned the complex rhythms and challenging chords into music that felt real and alive. The doubts became small whispers that were easily drowned out by her confidence. One afternoon, a classmate walked in while she was practicing and stopped to listen. He had been one of the students who doubted her ability, but as he watched her fingers glide across the keys, moving with precision and feeling, he found himself silent. He could see the music in her eyes, hear it in the soft but expressive notes, and realize that she was far more skilled than anyone had guessed. He didn't say anything, but the moment stayed with him. Even the smallest recognition mattered because it showed her progress was visible, even if only to one person at a time. Amira also began to notice her own growth. The piece that had seemed impossible when she first received it now began to feel manageable. Her fingers moved more freely. Her mind could anticipate the difficult passages, and the music itself began to feel familiar, almost as if it had been inside her all along. She had learned not just to play the notes, but to understand them, to feel them, to bring them to life in a way that was uniquely hers. Every practice session ended with a quiet reflection. She would sit back, letting the last notes linger in the air, and feel a sense of accomplishment. The journey was still ongoing. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but she also knew that she was capable. The teachers might not fully understand, and her classmates might not believe, but she felt a growing certainty that she could meet the challenge. In the quiet moments, when no one was around, she allowed herself small experiments. She would try different ways to play a section, adjusting the tempo, changing the dynamics, exploring the emotions within the music. Some experiments worked, some failed, but each attempt taught her something new. She was learning not just to follow the sheet music, but to interpret it, to make it her own. Her confidence was growing, but so was her patience. She knew that mastery would take time and that rushing would not help. Each day she focused on the details, on the subtle shifts that made the music expressive. She noticed the way certain chords could convey sadness, how a pause could create anticipation, how a soft note could speak louder than a rapid series of keys. The music became a conversation, a way to communicate feelings without words. The anticipation of the recital was always in the back of her mind, but she didn't let it overwhelm her. She treated each practice session as a step toward readiness, not as a test she had to pass immediately. This mindset allowed her to stay calm, to continue improving, and to enjoy the process of discovery. She began to see the challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to show herself what she could do. One day, while practicing a particularly difficult section, she noticed a shift. The notes flowed more smoothly. Her fingers seemed to know where to go without conscious thought, and the music began to feel natural and effortless. She smiled, recognizing the breakthrough that had been coming for days. It was a small moment, but it represented a turning point. The piece was no longer an impossible task. It was becoming something she could truly perform. Her parents were quietly proud when they heard her play at home. They didn't need to say much. A look, a nod, a simple smile was enough. They understood that Amira's journey was hers alone, and they were content to support her in the background. They had seen her dedication, her perseverance, and her growing confidence, and they knew that something remarkable was developing. Amira also began to notice the subtle changes in herself. She felt more self-assured, more focused, and more capable than before. She realized that the process of learning the piece had taught her more than just piano techniques. It had taught her patience, resilience, and the importance of believing in her own abilities. Each day brought new lessons, both in music and in life. The teachers continued their rounds, sometimes stopping by to observe, sometimes giving brief advice, but never fully grasping the depth of Amira's talent. They still expected mistakes, moments of hesitation, or signs of struggle, but found none. They saw a student working diligently, yet they did not yet see the magic that was forming in her hands, the talent that was quietly emerging through endless hours of dedication and practice. Her classmates' skepticism remained, but it no longer affected her. She had grown beyond caring what others thought. The music was hers, and her connection to it was more important than any opinion or judgment. She could feel the story of the piece unfolding within her, and that was enough. As the days passed, the recital drew nearer. Amira felt a quiet excitement building inside her. She knew that her preparation had been thorough, that she had faced the challenges of the piece and emerged stronger. She could feel the music in her hands, in her mind, and in her heart. She knew that she was ready to share it, ready to let the notes speak for themselves, and ready to show quietly but confidently what she was capable of. The day of the recital arrived, and the music school was filled with anticipation. Students were bustling about, adjusting their instruments, rehearsing final passages, and exchanging nervous smiles. Parents and visitors were settling into the rows of chairs in the auditorium, the air thick with excitement and expectation. Amira arrived early, carrying her sheet music and a small bag with essentials. She felt a quiet calm, the kind that comes from knowing you have prepared, even if others may not see your effort. The backstage area was crowded with students, each pacing or quietly reviewing their music. Some chatted nervously, others practiced small sections, and a few were absorbed in silent prayer or visualization. Amira found a quiet corner, laying her sheet music on a stand and running her fingers lightly over the keys of the piano provided for practice. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, centering herself. Her mind was focused not on the audience, not on the teachers, but on the music, on the story she wanted to tell. The first performers went on stage, and Amira watched silently from behind the curtain. The applause was polite but reserved, the performances competent but lacking the depth she had been cultivating in her own practice. She observed the teachers' expressions, noting the slight nods and furrowed brows. They were evaluating, critiquing, and expecting a certain level of skill, but Amira sensed that even they did not fully grasp the power of talent that went beyond mere technique. Minutes passed, and the tension backstage grew. Students whispered encouragement to each other, fidgeted with their sheet music, and tried to calm their nerves. Amira, however, felt a steady confidence. She had faced the challenges of her piece alone, without pressure, without expectation, and had emerged ready. The difficult passages that had once seemed impossible now flowed naturally under her fingers. She felt the music in her body, in her mind, and in her heart. Finally, her turn arrived. A stagehand signaled, and Amira walked calmly toward the grand piano. The lights were warm, casting a soft glow across the polished wood. She could see the audience, a mixture of teachers, students, parents, and music lovers, all waiting for her to begin. There was a moment of silence as she settled on the piano bench, arranged her sheet music, and let her hands hover above the keys. She took a deep breath and began. The opening notes filled the auditorium, clear and expressive. From the very first measure, it was evident that this was no ordinary performance. The music had life, depth, and feeling. Her fingers moved with precision, but more importantly with emotion. Every chord, every phrase, every subtle shift in tempo and volume conveyed a story. The audience was captivated, leaning forward in their seats, drawn into the world she was creating. Her classmates, who had doubted her, exchanged astonished glances. They had expected mistakes, hesitation, or a performance that would reveal her as ordinary. Instead, they saw mastery, confidence, and a deep connection to the music. They could feel the emotion in each note, the thoughtfulness behind every passage. Even those who had been skeptical found themselves caught up in the sound, unable to look away. The teachers were stunned. They had seen students perform many difficult pieces, and they had expected to witness struggle. But Amira's performance defied expectations. She played not just the notes but the meaning behind them. She interpreted the music in a way that was both technical and heartfelt. It was clear that she had invested hours of thought, practice, and personal connection into the piece. The expression on her face, the movement of her hands, the timing of each note, all spoke of someone who had become one with the music. As the piece progressed, Amira's confidence grew. She felt the rhythm flow naturally. The challenging passages that had once caused frustration now became opportunities for expression. She allowed herself to be immersed in the music, letting it guide her hands and emotions. Each measure became a sentence in the story she was telling. Each phrase a paragraph, each movement a chapter. The audience, initially curious, was now completely engaged. Some had their eyes closed, letting the music wash over them. Others watched intently, amazed at the control and sensitivity Amira displayed. There was a quiet hum of appreciation that filled the room, an unspoken recognition that what they were witnessing was something rare and remarkable. Even the students who had whispered doubts now sat in silence, captivated. They had underestimated her, and the surprise was evident on their faces. Some shifted nervously in their seats while others simply stared in awe. Amira's quiet determination and relentless practice had transformed her performance into a moment of revelation for everyone present. Halfway through the piece, Amira encountered a particularly difficult section, one that had challenged her for weeks. She had practiced it countless times, each attempt bringing her closer to perfection. Now, under the gaze of the audience and the pressure of the recital, she executed it flawlessly. Her fingers moved with grace and precision, hitting each note with clarity and expression. There was a fluidity, a naturalness that made it seem effortless, though she knew the effort it had taken to reach this point. The audience was mesmerized. A quiet murmur ran through the crowd, a mix of astonishment and admiration. Even the teachers who had expected to see flaws could not find a single mistake. Their eyes widened and some exchanged quick, whispered words of surprise. They had underestimated her, and now they had no choice but to acknowledge the extraordinary talent before them. Amira continued, her focus unwavering. She was aware of the applause that had begun quietly during some passages, growing steadily as the piece reached its climax. She allowed herself a small smile, not from pride but from the sheer joy of sharing her music. She had prepared, practiced, and connected with the piece so deeply that the audience could feel it too. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It was alive, breathing, and full of emotion. As she approached the final measures, she felt a sense of completion. The journey of the piece, from the first note to the last, had been a story of growth, struggle, and triumph. She poured every ounce of her energy into the closing chords, letting them resonate fully. The last note lingered in the auditorium, a perfect, clear sound that seemed to hang in the air, waiting for acknowledgement. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the audience erupted in applause, a thunderous response that filled the room. People stood, clapping, cheering, and some even shouting in amazement. Amira remained seated for a moment, letting the energy wash over her. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the music she had nurtured in practice had reached the hearts of everyone listening. The teachers approached her backstage afterward, their expressions a mix of shock and admiration. They had underestimated her, and now they were forced to recognize not just her skill but her dedication, her interpretation, and her connection to the music. Some offered sincere compliments, others asked questions about her preparation, and a few simply shook their heads in disbelief. Her classmates crowded around, expressing surprise and admiration. The ones who had doubted her now looked at her differently, some with newfound respect, others with humility. Amira responded with quiet gratitude, not needing to boast or seek approval. She had proven to herself what she was capable of, and that was more important than anyone else's opinion. As the day ended, Amira felt a mixture of relief and excitement. She had faced the challenge she had been given, overcome doubts, and delivered a performance that touched everyone in the room. The journey was far from over, and there would be more music to play, more challenges to meet, and more opportunities to grow. But in this moment, she allowed herself to savor the accomplishment, the joy, and the connection that music had brought into her life. After the recital, the school was buzzing with conversations about Amira's performance. Students, teachers, and visitors alike could not stop talking about the depth and emotion she had brought to the piece. It was the kind of performance that stayed with people long after the music ended. Her classmates, who had once doubted her, were now approaching her with expressions of awe and admiration. Some struggled to find the right words, others simply smiled, still amazed by what they had witnessed. Backstage, the teachers gathered, whispering among themselves. They had always prided themselves on being able to recognize talent and potential, yet Amira had surprised them all. They spoke of her technique, her control, and her interpretation, trying to put into words what had been obvious but difficult to explain. They had underestimated her, assuming that her quiet demeanor and modest presence reflected her skill level. Now they realized that talent often hides where least expected. Amira herself felt a mix of emotions. She was proud, but not in a boastful way. The joy she felt came from knowing that her music had connected with others, that the hours of practice and dedication had produced something beautiful. She felt a quiet happiness, a satisfaction that was deeper than applause or recognition. She knew she had grown, not only as a pianist but as a person, learning patience, focus, and the power of persistence. In the days following the recital, her life began to change in small ways. Students who had once ignored her now sought her out, asking questions about her practice routines and techniques. Teachers offered her more challenging pieces, inviting her to participate in advanced classes and workshops. Invitations to perform at other events and competitions began to arrive, each one a testament to the impression she had made on everyone who heard her. Amira handled the attention with humility. She did not see herself as superior to others. She simply loved playing the piano and expressing herself through music. She continued to practice with the same dedication and focus, finding joy in the process rather than the recognition. The admiration she received was a pleasant surprise, but it did not change her approach to her craft. At home, her parents noticed the shift in her confidence. They had always known she had talent, but seeing her recognized by others brought them a quiet pride. They supported her gently, offering encouragement and guidance when needed, but allowing her to navigate this new stage of her musical journey on her own terms. Their love and support gave her the freedom to grow without pressure or expectation. One afternoon, a music critic who had attended the recital reached out to the school, requesting a private performance by Amira. The school administrators were eager to arrange it, knowing that this could be an opportunity for her to gain wider recognition. Amira agreed, seeing it as a chance to challenge herself further and share her music with someone who appreciated it deeply. She approached the performance with the same focus and dedication as before, not seeking approval but wanting to give her best. The day of the private performance arrived, and Amira prepared carefully. She reviewed the piece, paying attention to every detail, every nuance, every emotion. As she played, she felt a deep connection with the music, a sense of unity that made her fingers move effortlessly across the keys. The critic listened intently, nodding and taking notes, clearly impressed by the maturity and depth of her interpretation. After the performance, the critic spoke with Amira, praising not only her technical skill, but also her ability to convey emotion through music. He mentioned that her playing had a rare quality, a sense of understanding and connection that went beyond the notes themselves. He encouraged her to continue performing, to explore new pieces, and to consider sharing her talent more widely. His words were affirming, but Amira felt that the true reward was in the music itself, in the joy of creating and sharing it. Amira continued her studies with renewed focus and energy. The recognition she had received did not make her complacent. It motivated her to work harder, to explore new techniques, and to deepen her understanding of music. She sought out challenging pieces, experimented with different styles, and allowed herself to take risks in her performances. Each new experience added to her growth, expanding her skills and enriching her musical expression. Her classmates began to see her not just as a talented musician, but as a source of inspiration. Some approached her for guidance, others observed her practice habits, and many simply admired her dedication and humility. Amira welcomed their interest, offering advice and support when asked, but always maintaining her quiet focus. She had learned that true talent is not about seeking attention, but about the dedication and passion that drive continuous improvement. The teachers also adjusted their perspective. They became more attentive, noticing the subtle ways in which Amira interpreted music and encouraging her to explore her creativity further. They offered constructive feedback, challenged her with more advanced pieces, and provided opportunities for performance. They recognized that her talent was not just in technical skill, but in the emotional depth and understanding she brought to every piece she played. Amira's connection to music deepened as she explored new styles and composers. She discovered that each piece had its own story, its own emotional landscape, and she learned to adapt her playing to convey these narratives. Her practice sessions became moments of discovery, reflection, and expression. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a partner in communication, a medium through which she could share her thoughts, feelings, and experiences with others. As she continued to grow, Amira also learned to balance her musical pursuits with her personal life. She maintained her friendships, participated in school activities, and remained grounded despite the growing attention she received. Her humility and kindness endeared her to others, reinforcing the idea that talent and character could coexist in harmony. The experience of the recital and the recognition that followed taught Amira valuable lessons about perseverance, confidence, and the importance of believing in oneself. She understood that challenges are opportunities for growth, that hard work and dedication can lead to unexpected rewards, and that true talent is often revealed in quiet, persistent effort rather than in loud displays of skill. Amira's journey was far from over. There were still more pieces to learn, more performances to give, and more opportunities to explore her abilities. She approached each new challenge with the same focus, determination, and humility that had carried her through the difficult assignment given by her teachers. Each day she continued to grow, not only as a pianist but as a person, embracing the lessons of patience, dedication, and the quiet joy of creating something meaningful. The story of her performance spread beyond the school, reaching other musicians, critics, and music lovers who were eager to hear her play. Invitations to perform in recitals, competitions, and private events began to multiply. Amira accepted these opportunities selectively, ensuring that each performance was approached with the same care, attention, and emotional investment that had become the hallmark of her playing. Through it all, Amira remained grounded, aware that her talent was a gift that required constant nurturing and growth. She continued to practice diligently, explore new musical horizons, and connect with the emotions and stories within each piece. The recognition she received was secondary to the personal fulfillment she found in music, and she remained committed to sharing her gift with sincerity and passion. In the quiet moments after practice or a performance, Amira would reflect on her journey. She remembered the doubts, the struggles, and the long hours of preparation, recognizing that each step had contributed to her growth. She felt gratitude for the challenges she had faced, the teachers who had pushed her, and the opportunities that had allowed her talent to shine. These reflections reinforced her commitment to her craft, motivating her to continue improving and sharing her music with the world. Amira's story became an inspiration to others, a reminder that true talent often hides in quiet places, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Her journey demonstrated the power of perseverance, focus, and self-belief, and the importance of allowing passion and dedication to guide one's path. Through her music, she touched the hearts of everyone who listened, leaving a lasting impression that extended far beyond the notes themselves. Amira's life continued to evolve after the recital, and her experiences began to open doors she had never imagined. Each performance brought new opportunities, invitations from music events, and messages from people eager to hear her play. Though she had achieved recognition, she remained grounded. The applause, the attention, and even the praise were not her primary motivation. What mattered most to her was the connection she felt to the music, the joy of expressing emotions through the piano, and the satisfaction of turning practice into artistry. Every day began much like it had before, with quiet practice in the early morning. The world around her could be noisy, chaotic, or distracting, but Amira found peace in the consistency of her routine. The piano was her companion, her teacher, and her confidant. She explored new pieces, some challenging, some simple, each one providing a different emotional journey. With each note, she continued to discover more about herself and the ways in which music could communicate feelings that words could not capture. Her teachers now watched her differently. They had learned a valuable lesson. Quietness does not equate to mediocrity. Amira's skill was no longer a secret, and they encouraged her to share her knowledge with younger students and peers. She began mentoring those who struggled with pieces or lacked confidence. Her patience, empathy, and understanding of the learning process made her a natural guide. Students who once underestimated her now looked up to her for advice and inspiration. Despite her growing reputation, Amira never lost the humility that had always been part of her. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, hard work, and a love for the craft were equally important. She kept herself focused, setting personal goals rather than chasing external validation. Each performance became a chance to refine her skills, each practice session a moment to connect with the music more deeply, and each challenge an opportunity to grow. One afternoon, Amira received an invitation to perform at a regional music competition. She was initially hesitant, unsure if she wanted to expose herself to judgment and comparison. But after reflection, she accepted, realizing that the experience would help her grow and that she could approach it on her own terms. She prepared meticulously, reviewing every note, practicing expression, and visualizing the performance. The preparation itself was a journey, a continuation of her ongoing relationship with the piano and music. On the day of the competition, Amira arrived early, taking time to familiarize herself with the instrument and the environment. Other participants were nervous, chatting or rehearsing frantically. Amira, as always, focused inwardly, centering herself on the music and the connection she felt to each piece. When her turn came, she approached the piano calmly, her fingers poised above the keys, her mind fully present in the moment. The performance began, and the room was immediately captivated. Amira's interpretation was precise, expressive, and deeply moving. She conveyed the emotions of each piece with clarity and authenticity. The judges, who had expected technical skill, were impressed by the depth of feeling she brought to every note. The audience felt it too, leaning in, listening intently, and responding with quiet admiration and applause. Her performance ended, and the audience erupted with appreciation. Amira smiled softly, grateful for the opportunity to share her music. She did not focus on winning or recognition. The fulfillment came from knowing she had expressed herself fully and authentically. The judges awarded her a high ranking, praising not only her technical ability but also her emotional interpretation and connection to the music. After the competition, invitations to perform at various events and recitals began to arrive more frequently. Amira considered each opportunity carefully, choosing those that allowed her to grow as a musician while staying true to her values. She continued to practice with discipline, explore new pieces, and mentor students, balancing her growing public presence with her personal development and love for music. Amira's influence extended beyond performance. Her story inspired other students who had felt overlooked or underestimated. She demonstrated that quiet determination, consistent effort, and a genuine passion for one's craft could lead to recognition and fulfillment. She became a symbol of perseverance, encouraging others to pursue their goals with dedication, humility, and patience. At home, Amira maintained her routines and connection to her family. They were her anchor, supporting her growth without pressure or expectation. Their encouragement was steady and quiet, allowing her to flourish while remaining true to herself. She valued their presence and advice, and they continued to nurture her love for music with gentle guidance and understanding. Through all of these experiences, Amira grew not only as a pianist but also as a person. She learned the importance of perseverance, the power of quiet confidence, and the value of self-belief. She understood that recognition and praise were rewarding, but not the ultimate measure of success. The true reward was the ability to connect with others through music, to express emotions that words could not convey, and to find fulfillment in the process of creation. Amira also explored the emotional depth of music, experimenting with new compositions, improvisation, and interpretations of classical pieces. She discovered that music could reflect complex emotions, tell stories, and evoke responses in others that were profound and meaningful. Each exploration enriched her understanding, expanded her skills, and deepened her connection to the art form. As time passed, Amira's presence in the music world continued to grow. She performed in recitals, competitions, and private events, always approaching each performance with focus, integrity, and passion. Her reputation was built not on showmanship, but on the authenticity and depth of her artistry. She became known not only for her skill but also for her humility, dedication, and the emotional resonance of her music. Through all of this, Amira remained grounded. She continued her early morning practice sessions, quiet reflections, and personal explorations of music. She kept her focus on improvement rather than comparison, on expression rather than approval, and on connection rather than applause. This mindset allowed her to maintain balance and perspective, even as opportunities and recognition increased. Amira's story became a source of inspiration and encouragement to those around her. Students, teachers, and audiences alike recognized the value of persistence, humility, and passion. They saw how quiet determination and consistent effort could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Amira's journey showed that talent alone is not enough. It must be nurtured, practiced, and connected to purpose and emotion to truly shine. In the quiet moments after practice or performance, Amira reflected on her journey. She remembered the early days of struggle, the doubts, the hours of practice, and the moments of breakthrough. She understood that every challenge, every setback, and every effort had contributed to her growth. These reflections reinforced her dedication, reminding her that the path of learning and creation is ongoing, rewarding, and deeply personal. Amira's future was full of possibilities. There were new compositions to explore, new audiences to reach, and new opportunities to share her music. She approached each with curiosity, dedication, and the same quiet confidence that had carried her from the first practice sessions to her recognition as a talented and expressive pianist. Her story continued to unfold, a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and the belief in one's own potential. Through her music, Amira left a lasting impression on everyone who heard her play. She showed that talent, when combined with dedication, humility, and emotional connection, could touch hearts and inspire others. Her journey was a reminder that greatness is often revealed quietly, patiently, and with persistent effort, waiting for the right moment to shine.